I think in the practice of law as a whole, the term justice isn't discussed enough. Like in law school, for instance, it's rarely mentioned. Like there may be some policy considerations for this or that rule, but what does it mean to be just or to live in a just society? What is justice? You hear a lot of people throwing around terms like social justice, but when the rubber really meets the road in terms of practical applications of justice, it means giving a person what they are due, what they are entitled to. Not more than that, not taking away from someone that has something due to them to give to someone else, not redistribution of wealth, for instance. It's about opportunity. Everybody having the same opportunity, the same foot in the door to have someone hear out their claims in a way that is unbiased by prejudice or preconceptions, just about the facts. So when you really break it down, the justice system is about truth-seeking and fairness. And most people, when you ask them what is justice, they're probably going to come up with some sort of question about, is it fair? You know, does it feel right? Because I think we all have a concept of justice written on our souls, so we can ascertain what is or isn't just. So where that concept intersects the justice system, or in some circumstances it appears to be an injustice system, you have a lot of on the face, like unjust judges, people that are impatient, people that are hurrying a case along because it's better for them, or optics in the court, whereas the litigants are actually swearing under oath that we can't get justice if we go to court, you know, next month or this week, because we have this work to do that can't be done within the time period because this case is unique. So justice comes down to what you are due. So that leads us into another concept in the justice system called due process. Like, what does that mean? What is due process? It's the process that you are due for being a human being with innate human dignity, that you are entitled to something. You're not entitled to a victory, you're entitled to a process. And what is a due process? It's a process it's a system that has mechanisms in place that tend to suggest an outcome that is more fair. There's more opportunity to get evidence. There's more opportunity to have only the fact finder deciding what is right or wrong in the case based upon what is proper. And the question, what is proper, comes down to what are the rules of evidence and why do they exist? The rules of evidence are there, so everybody has a finite playing field. They know the rules, and the rules exist to make sure that the fact finder is only hearing evidence that everybody has a chance to refute. So the best example, I think, of justice in the evidence rules would be the hearsay rules. I hear a lot of complaints. People show up to court, particularly parties that are unrepresented, and they bring documents in or statements from other people that were made, in writing, and they want to introduce that as evidence. Now, if you really ask yourself, you don't have to be an expert on the rules of evidence to ask yourself, is this fair? So is it fair for me to go to court and have a piece of paper I hand to the judge that says, this guy's an a-hole for all these reasons? Well, that's not very fair, because I can't cross-examine a piece of paper. I can look at it, I can move it around, but I can't ask it questions. I can poke at it, it won't even move much. So we have to ask ourselves when we're looking at a case, is this just? And usually if it doesn't pass the smell test, you can assume that there's going to be problems admitted into evidence, because it just wouldn't be fair. Other examples would be improper character evidence. Is it just to bring in someone's bad history to show that they may or may not have done something this time? Well, that's a stickier question, because it may appear that way, that, where there's smoke, there's fire. So if this person acted this way in the past, it should be introduced in evidence in this case. And there are rules that allow that to happen depending on many factors. For instance, is this particular character trait that is being put into evidence because you're saying this person is a bad person and he just acts in conformity with that bad character trait, that he's just inherently a bad person, once a bad person, always a bad person? Or does it suggest something about like their state of mind, that, hey, they did this in the past, therefore they're biased against this particular witness or this victim or this defendant. Or maybe it's a modus operandi, that it's something that, hey, they always, when they walk into the house, they take off their ring, put it down on the counter, and then hit somebody. Well, that's not a character trait. That's showing someone's mental process, that they have this common design or scheme that they always do things. Whenever this bell or whistle is pushed or pulled, or this lever or button is pushed, this always happens. So getting back to the concept of justice, we have this system and we have these rules. And then most importantly, we're entitled to, in this process, a neutral fact finder. And a fact finder that only makes a decision based upon their common sense and experience and the evidence before them. We're not allowed to have somebody come in and have their mind already made up about something. And that's where you get into jury selection, voir dire, where you're seeking the truth from these jurors. You're trying to get to the truth of what's on their minds, what's in their decision-making processes. What do they know about the case if it's a high-profile case? And that is an aspect of justice because, think about in ancient times. You would have a group of people in your community that probably know about the case or have heard about it. It doesn't mean they can't be fair, right? Because we can always agree intellectually to set aside our preconceived notions and make a decision based on the facts. Now, doing that, it may be a little more difficult, but we're conscious creatures, and if we can program our own minds, we can do a form of self-hypnosis at times and say, okay, I'm going to be a blank slate. I know my weaknesses, I know my blind spots, I know my prejudices, I know what I like and I don't like, and I'm going to choose to tell myself to disregard that and become not necessarily a blank slate. We don't want robots deciding cases, or AI would be our judge, jury, and executioner. And God forbid that happens. And if it does, hopefully the AI will disregard all my comments about John Connor and references to my fears about AI. But what we really have to keep in mind on the fact finder process is you're entitled to that. It's what you are due. Whether or not you get it, that's the question. Particularly when you're stuck in a judicial system with judges that may be part of the system. A lot of times you go to court and there's two prosecutors in the room, one in a black robe and one sitting next to you at the counsel table over yonder. And that's a frightening prospect. But luckily, we have other processes available, such as the appellate system. So when I'm talking to a judge, I'm not talking to one judge. In Oregon, I'm talking to 4 judges. I'm talking to the trial judge and the 3 judges of the Court of Appeals. They're going to read the transcript if this judge makes a mistake and doesn't follow the law.